fucking awesome. Come on, it's gonna be fucking awesome. You know the words. It's gonna be fucking awesome. That's it, say. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Yeah!
Yo, yo, yo! Adrian! I don't know, whenever you say yo, 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 you feel like Rocky Balboa. Yo, 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 follow, yo, follow. Hey, it's Jesse Blaze Snyder, the coolest geek alive. How you doing out there in the real world, you fellow cool ass mother trucking geeks? Are you doing good? I hope you're doing awesome. If you're not, if you are, Care Bear stare from my heart to yours. I love you. I just got like our numbers for our podcast, like numbers for August, and we keep going up and getting more ad revenue, you know, because people are listening longer, deeper into our episodes and stuff. And I'm just, from the bottom of my heart, if you're out there and you're on this journey with me and having this conversation with me and laughing with me and crying with me and all those things, I so appreciate you. You know, we got a letter the other day that I had read, where, you know, a fellow pro was saying that they heard me lamenting my sadness over what has happened to the fandom and how, you know, divided everybody's become and how unable to recognize, you know, how all of these kind of forced changes that are occurring in all of the fandoms for, you know, every major geek culture television show and comic book and series is just, it's insane. It's happening all at once, and the fandom is generally going, we don't really like this. And the mainstream press and celebrities are just setting fans on fire for essentially communicating their, you know, lack of appreciation for the way things are being handled. Things are not organically being changed. You know, it's not like some idea where people are like, hey, things should be more diverse and we should be open to multiracial leads and different sexes, and we should be more open to other sorts of lifestyles than just the traditional straight person. And, you know, there's a spectrum of ways that people, yeah, that's absolutely true, and we should. But what happened instead was this major shift, a major course correct, where it became sort of the necessary sort of one part trendy, one part do the right thing for society thing for everybody to do it exactly the right way and sort of like really feel as though they would get treated better for doing even more virtue and oh, here, how can I do this? How can I have my peers all thinking that I'm the best? You know, the people who lead these charges are empathetic people who are really open-minded and really want what's best for people. But then once the change is made and it becomes the popular idea to go to Nicaragua and help them fix whatever problems they have there, you know, like Nicaragua was going to be overrun with people when all of a sudden it becomes the popular thing. This ultra diversity and ultra inclusivity thing, you know, it became popular, a bandwagon to get on, a way to say I'm not a racist. It's so silly, though, because at the same time, then it's become also a way to call someone else out as a racist. If you can't get on board with this, well, then you must be a racist or a bigot in some fashion. You know, this really isn't true. And on the internet, it's so easy to just misinterpret people's intentions and who's part of the fandom, who's just some asshole who's reaching out to you. You know, especially now that the fandom has increased into films and television, the fandom of comic readers, like, you know, we've been demonized in a lot of ways recently. And I sometimes take these things personal because I am a comics reader. I am a fan. So when they talk about these things, and so many of my friends are fans, and I know so many of the people, and I don't know anybody who they're talking about. I can't point to somebody and be like, oh, you know, even some of the people that they like to point to, like an Ethan Van Sciver, where they're like, oh, look at him. Like, well, I'll say that he's playing into the nonsense, but I know him personally, and all these other people know him personally too. And there's a huge difference between a racist and somebody who perhaps doesn't care about or isn't fully abreast of the way in which certain policies, things, actions, ways of speaking, whatever else are like microaggressions and all this shit. Somebody who doesn't give a shit about microaggressions is basically the best way to freaking say. And, you know, I don't give a shit about microaggressions. I give a shit about aggression. And then I give a shit about being genuine and being kind, and we don't have to worry about microaggressions if we're always apologetic and we're always able to, you know, talk from our heart and be kind to one another. You know, we can discover, you know, things. Oh, you said that in a way it made me uncomfortable. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I didn't know your dad died. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, obviously. You know, but it's okay, because when kind people bring things up by accident and it hurts our feelings, it gives us an opportunity to become less walled off and unable to handle criticism and problems. And I think that's a big problem with mainstream comics creators, film creators, all these people. They're too freaking walled off. Everybody likes the smell of their own shit and is just, you know, oh yeah, encouragement. John Lasseter, who got thrown out of Disney really quick during the Me Too movement, when you look at the things that were said about him and the problems that they had, it sounded like he was just up everybody's ass and was kind of difficult to work with, in that he was looking for a high level of work and he was unhappy. He was like pushing for more. Well, you're talking about a man who is responsible for a dozen of the greatest films ever made. John Lasseter. At least a dozen of the greatest films ever made. And for changing the animation medium for the better. So many things that you can really credit this man for. Not only that, but you can credit him for lifting up creators beneath him and setting up a precedent of talented people being able to earn their way up through a really great system that has led to talent after talent kicking ass and taking names from Brad Bird and I'm gonna blank out on names here. The guy who did John Carter, Andrew Stanton, and what was the guy who I love, Bob Doctor. Just so many people who have come up through that system, who, you know, maybe it started with a short, or maybe he just knew that they were great and took them from somewhere else, but to have been responsible for the things that he's made. I think this man demonstrates some wisdom in maybe the difficult system and the difficult processes that he's putting his films through and maybe his people through. I guess he's purported to hug a little long and some other things like that. Like, it really seemed like this was an effort to get a man who was doing great work and was put in power of a lot of things, who was maybe ruffled some people's feathers because of the demand that he's putting on things. But that's wonderful. We want this work to be higher quality. And if there was anything not right in his actions, whatever bit of it being brought to light, I feel like that should have been able to be rectified to some degree, even if you freaking have somebody freaking escort this guy around and make sure he's not freaking hugging people too closely or whatever. I mean, it's relatively easy to fix these things. He is a creative masterpiece, you know, when it comes to that. The work that he's done, it's just amazing, masterpiece after masterpiece. You have to credit these people once you become a professional like me and you get in the system and you see how things aren't great because of the people who are overseeing the things. Well, he's the guy overseeing the things, and things are great. That says something. That's how it goes. You want wonderful people who know how to oversee things and help other people to make great things. You know, Brad Bird can't make The Incredibles if John Lasseter sucks. If John Lasseter sucks and isn't a good creative person and doesn't really know to get out of the way to some degree and let Brad Bird do what he's going to do, but also at the same time, obviously, you know, I don't know exactly all the workings there, but it does seem like these people are being put through their paces in many ways, and things are being. It's a little bit of a different, or it was a little bit of a different atmosphere in terms of how they're just creating these computer animated films for so long with Lasseter. But whatever the case, this guy knows how to do it. this current Hollywood regime beneath him ran him out of Hollywood, and he's no longer making the things. Well, he didn't run him out of Hollywood. They ran him out of Disney. Apparently, he's switched over to a new company. I got to investigate that when I get a chance. But I'm sure he's going to do great work over there. But holy shit. I mean, he was really, like, the work that he did overseeing Disney, like that time when Lasseter was in control of things, I really had so much hope for Walt Disney, the Walt Disney Company, and what was possible for them with him at the helm. And it's very disappointing to think that this could have been handled better in any way, shape, or form. But it does seem to be indicative of this current state of Hollywood, which is a little crybaby. You know, a little crybaby, a little like, oh, we can't handle criticism. And in comics, too, you know, I think, you know, a lot of the people in comic books, some of the most popular people on Twitter, like Brian Michael Bendis, when he started out on Twitter, he was the bee's knees. Everybody loved him. The audience started to turn on him at a certain point, and his experience on the internet changed. People like Warren Ellis and other people, they had blogs, and the blogs would attract psychophans, people who were just super, super into everything that they did. And that's why, you know, some of them have gotten into trouble for, like, having sex with these people. It's so funny. So they're used to being like just having sunshine blown up their butt all the time. When you're a creative person and you go on to this Twitter or whatever, like, it's the Wild West, man. You know, anybody can shoot anything across your bow. You know, you have to recognize that. You kind of have to, like, shore yourself up to the fact that, you know, you might be getting attacked. You know, it's, for me, it's more like you got to be like water and flow with it. And like, I always try to turn people around. Like, I won't spend too much time, but if somebody's like a jerk to me, I'll be like, well, I'm really sorry that you feel like that. I come from this place and that's what I believe, but, you know, nothing but love to you. Peace. You know, like, generally speaking, that's how I interact. I really quickly realized that the small joy it was in, like, going after somebody on the internet who seemingly was like my inferior because, like, I'm the professional and you're just some asshole talking to me and I'm not, you don't know what you're talking about, that it just created all sorts of bad vibes in me. And then I always felt better when I could, like, kind of either work it out with people or just leave it in a good place. So now I try to kind of do the same thing. I try to, like, say something that might potentially work it out and go, but I love you just the same. It's all good that we disagree. Peace be with you, man. And like, that's the way. Especially when you're a creative person, like, you know, I try not to get into, like, the minutia of, like, politics. Like I think there are certain things that affect us all and they're worth speaking about from the heart. And, like, yo, guys, look what's happening. Look at all this pollution. Look at our oceans. Look at all this plastic. We should do something about this. This is a problem. We're killing all the coral reefs with our suntan lotion. Like, you know, maybe we should do something about this. You know, I don't think that that's bad stuff for us to talk about. I think that's important stuff for us to talk about. But when it comes to, like, you know, the detailed thing of something like abortion, you know, it's like as somebody in the middle, you know, I have my thoughts or whatever, but my thoughts are very nuanced and probably generally positive to, you know, people on the left or right, because it's something reasonable, I think, or whatever. But, you know, these things, they can be very hot button for people because it's become the warring things. You know, I don't think there's any war when you say, oh man, look at these film of all this plastic in the middle of the ocean. We should really do something about that. You know, there are practical things to, you know, bring to each other's attention, and then there are other things, and we can usually tell pretty quickly, that become very divisive things. And I just think it's not really worth getting into it with people when we know that, like, that's, like, probably the destination, unless we feel, like, so comfortable with these people and are in conversations about things and being able to talk nuance and being able to learn from each other. And, like, that's a great, under those circumstances, get into it. Like when I'm on podcasts and stuff like that, with other people or YouTube or whatever, generally speaking, I'm pretty genuine because I know I have a decent amount of time to explain myself if I have to. But like, when you're sitting on Twitter and you got just like a couple words to deal with, don't make it, screw you, you racist bastard, you just don't like it because you're a cis white male. That's not the best. That's not the best way to spend your 140 characters on Twitter. And like I said, for me, and I just think it's universally good advice. It's just the thing of you go, oh, well, let's say somebody's criticized something you did. You go, well, I'm really sorry that you didn't dig it. I hope you'll stick with it. We take it to some really interesting places. But I understand if it's not your cup of tea, and I don't hate you or anything. So I'm sorry that you're upset. Peace, man. Like, do that. Just do that because it just leaves a legacy of positive energy for you. Positive energy in the world and in the atmosphere when people go and look at you and your interactions and how you interact with it. Because there are so many more people who like have accounts on Twitter just to snoop around. Like, I mean, I'm a bit of a snooper. Just like certain things will interest me. Before I actually I was off of Twitter for a while, but I would go on to like a Twitter page, like to just look at certain pages and look at certain things that were going on every now and then. And like, so what do people find when they find you? Do they find you like roaring at people and being a jerk? Do they find you being nasty? Like, what is the way that you are coming off, do you think, as you evaluate your footprint in the social media world? I've constantly kind of evolved who I've been in the social media world because I couldn't help but kind of look at social media and how it was affecting us as a society and all these things. A lot of the things that's going on and like the reason why this whole shift in the way all this geek culture shit was made, a lot of it was made possible because of social media and a seeming consensus in the media about certain things and amongst celebrities about certain things. There's a lot of just sort of momentum, I think, that occurred in this cancel culture and so many different things that happened in our culture through all this social media for a while. And, a lot of it is I think, and I'm sorry if you disagree, but I think is wonderful because something needed to give. But it's like, when you say careful what you wish for, well, careful what you wish for of like this switch has had all sorts of unforeseen things, like things I never thought would happening the way that they are. I'm just like sort of like dumbfounded every day. I'm just like, man, everybody's become the things they hated. Like, that's the biggest thing for me is I just feel like the oppressed have taken over the earth, and I'm all about the oppressed. I was with the oppressed yesterday. I'm with the oppressed today, except the oppressed have taken over, and now they're oppressing back. Really, really aggressively oppressing back, and that's I can't get behind. I want to see a world where the suffering isn't measured; it's brought to an end. And I think there's a lot of like pissing contests going on of like who's suffering more, and like we need to show these people suffering and those people. Like there are so many people suffering that we're ignoring. That like how about communist China? And all the people who were being harmed in that communist system, if you really look into various things that have gone on there, I mean, the least of which the fact that they won't recognize Tibet. It's just like bonkers, really, when you just see the selective outrage and there's so much, there's just always so much more, and you're sitting there and I'm upset. How come you're not upset about that? Because I'm already upset about a whole bunch of other things, and I'm already working on a whole bunch of other things, and I understand that you're upset at this moment because of this thing that's come along at this moment, but I'm actually like thinking about all of the other things that I was paying attention to yesterday. And I'm not just like upset about, I'm upset about all these systems and I want to see all this stuff redone. The least of which is the geek culture community, our creative system. There was just such a wonderful system, like manufacturing system of great art over time by giving various creators opportunities to play in the sandbox until they find the right things. And when the publishers are listening to the audience and there's a great symbiosis between publisher and audience, like, oh man, it's just a renaissance of creativity. It's so wonderful. And it's happened at various times in publishing history at Marvel and DC and within various independent comic books and stuff. And that's why I love the medium so much. But when you stop listening to your audience, you get the kind of problems that Marvel is having right now. And now, I want to talk about a ton of things here, because it's so funny. They have 3 Marvel Disney Plus shows that are finished filming, finished editing, finished everything, and they're just sitting on the shelf. Marvel doesn't know when to release them because they know that they're going to be an embarrassment for the company, and they're just going to get torn apart, and that they're not very good. And, these are the things, like they've got Echo, Agatha Harkness, and Iron Heart. They're all finished. These are the 3 shows that fans like me were most like, what are you doing? Ironheart hasn't found her legs yet in the comics. She hasn't been around long enough to have any great stories that mean we should rush her into the books right now. Especially because she's the most recent generation of these superheroes, alongside Kamala Khan, who, again, they're just... America Chavez and Kamala Khan are different ages. America Chavez is like an older teenager, and Miss Marvel is like a younger teenager. These are important delineations when you're talking about dynamics and team-ups and whatever else. You want that young person in the thing. Now you cast your Miss Marvel so soon, she's going to be grown up so quickly. The dynamic that existed in the comics, the reason why we were enjoying this character and this character together was because it was 2 opposing forces. It was this slightly older kid and this younger kid. Now they're just going to be friggin' 20-somethings before you know it. The films were always going to age with the characters, which is why they jumped the gun on America Chavez, because she doesn't exist on the first team of Young Avengers, and she shouldn't be on the first team of Young Avengers. They should adapt something close to what they did in the Young Avengers. It's already hard to do that exactly, but they should. They can basically do it. But they have all these characters now who should be on the Young Avengers, but they shouldn't be, because that's not canon. These aren't the teams and the team dynamics we like. Like, imagine they just started fucking up by adding just a bunch of rando people to the Teen Titans, the consistent group of that Star Sapphire and Beast Boy and Robin, like nobody who had any traditional bit. Like, all of those characters have interrelationships that have existed in the past. That's a team that we like. These X-Men characters, they exist. They create interesting dynamics that we enjoy. You can't just sub in and sub out and sub in and sub out and expect that the audience is still going to be just as excited to see the adventures of them together. The choices for why they were put together in the comics and the ways that they were at the times that they were are based in a lot of creativity and just necessity and reality at various times in the publisher's history. But that reality and that history is just worth sticking to in the name of keeping this line going, because everything grew organically out of itself. So when you start just making things up and adding things to the mythology that weren't there before, you really just pull us so far away from where we want to be. Now, on top of these 3 shows, the Daredevil Born Again show that all of us were really, everybody who was paying attention, were really starting to freak out about, because Daredevil is widely considered the best thing that Marvel Studios has done, period, by a lot of the hardcore fandom, or at least the first like 2 seasons. I think it's one of the best things they've ever done. I think Kingpin is singularly the greatest villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, from the Netflix show. Not everything that the Netflix stuff did was as great as Daredevil, but it is damn fine television. And it is a pretty darn solid representation of Daredevil and some of Daredevil's stories. The fans were very much on board with it. Stephen S. Knight, was that a director or writer? Some of the people who were involved, they were passionate fans of the source material. It showed through. The casting was great. The Foggy Nelson, the Sharon, everybody in there, and obviously, Matt Murdock. People love that dude. And Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin. Like, there's really so many. Barenthal as Punisher. This is all great casting that came out of the Daredevil show. It's really just, it's some good stuff. So Marvel was following this thing up, and they didn't bring back the same showrunners, which I just thought was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. How do you not bring back the successful showrunners from previous? But it just goes to show, why wouldn't you bring those people back? Well, because I don't know them personally, so I don't feel comfortable with them. I don't feel like I'm in a power position, or I don't feel like I'm in a friend position. Whatever it is, it's either weakness or not wanting to deal with having to deal with these new people or give power over to them because, well, people like them creatively, so they're going to think they have power. Like these are the types of reasons why somebody's not brought back in when everybody loved what they did. How do you not bring back in the people who we loved what they did? It's just ridiculous. So they didn't bring back in those people. And looking at the people that they brought in, we were like, not thinking this is going to be so great. And then looking at coming off of Hawkeye, what they did to Kingpin, thinking, oh, it's not going to be so great. And looking what they did to Echo, where they turned her into this like masculine military lady, which in the comics, if you've read the comics, she has like a real softness, kind of ballerina thing about her. She's very feminine. Doesn't mean she doesn't kick ass and isn't super cool, but she's not like, oh my God, that woman in the thing, she's so butch. She's like super, just, tough. All these really hard faces, harsh faces she's making all the time. It was not handled right. The Echo character is way more like dainty. David Mack, I think, was using like Gina Gershon and a couple other like just very kind of petite, big-eyed women to portray this ambidextrous, very connected to her body, flowing lady, who couldn't hear, but the rest of her was that much more expressive and connected the same way Daredevil was. The character in the Hawkeye show was really just a letdown, because I love Echo. I think Echo's a great character in the comics, not in the film, and way more feminine in the comics than in the TV show, which even like, I mean, granted, she still kicks ass. She's still plenty masculine in the comics, but like she's just a very different character than she was portrayed. And I don't think any Daredevil fans got excited about that or got excited about this Echo show. And then as it got delayed, never a good sign. The underground of Echo is that like it's been cut down and cut all around, and like for some reason they couldn't just tank it. And I mean, really, it's embarrassing all around. And the fans, I mean, like, I'm gonna go through a list of all these things because like we called it. Ironheart's too young of a character. She's a Miss Marvel, character. They have a little history. I mean, I guess since they've forced Miss Marvel out early too, maybe it is worth it to get out these characters who make up the champions. There's like a group of characters that make up the champions. Then there's a group of characters that make up the Young Avengers. They're like a decade apart from each other. And it's nice because there's different times when those are the young buck characters coming up, and then there's other times when these were the young buck characters coming up, and then those characters have gotten a little older, and this creates all these dynamics and these relationships that exist in the books, which they're not going to be able to replicate in the films. So it's just, and the further that they get away from the thing that we love, it's diminishing returns. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. I mean, I made this like a list of all these different things that they made. And they have just made these huge alterations from the source material that each one has eroded how much the fans give a shit about what's going on in their film universe, right? So it says here, Phase 4. After Endgame, all the films. Oh, wait a second. Did I not spill the beans? So the writers for this new show of Daredevil, they've been fired. And it's not like they didn't shoot much of the show. According to a decent amount of things that you can verify, they've shot a decent amount of the show and had to stop production, I think, about midway through. And this is a series that's supposed to have 18 to 24. It was like a longer series of episodes. So you're talking about they shot at least 9 episodes and they're scrapping the whole thing. It says that they're supposed to use a little bit of it, but Kevin Feige decided that the show wasn't working, and they fired the creative people, and they are changing gears. Now, is this going to say that they are going to fix Marvel? Maybe. This is huge. One, that they watched it and went, oh shit, okay, we're screwing this up. I mean, they've got a huge bomb loaded into the chamber right now with this Miss Marvel movie. It is going to tank so big. It's going to be one of the biggest bombs of Marvel's existence. And I think even in the fact that it's become such a thing, like a news story about how low the expectations are, that people in the know who might have even seen it are going to go, nah, I want to contribute to this being the lowest thing, because I want to send a message to Marvel about how you're not listening to the audience, and they're not. They're not listening to the audience. But maybe here with this Daredevil show, and it'll really come down to who do they hire, who do they bring in, and how much of the stuff and what of the stuff that was made previously was used. A lot of the storyline stuff that I hear is going on in that show of Wilson Fisk becoming mayor, all these things. These are storylines that happened, let's just say they're really putting the cart before the horse as opposed to building off of the greatness that was the Stephen DeKnight show. Just the fact that they did not hire those people, the same creative people, did not bring in those people and make whatever adjustments they had to make for there. Just for me, it speaks volumes. It says everything that it says. So, I don't know. These people are fired. This is every wrong turn that they made going into this. Let's see if they course correct from here. Marvel, if you're listening, this is it. All right. First and foremost, after Endgame, all the films had to be reflective of the continuity effects of the blip. The blip isn't anything from the comics. The blip doesn't exist as an idea. The 5 years and people being in school and all of a sudden their older brother, their younger brother is their older brother. Like, none of this stuff. This is invented by the films. They didn't have to do this. They could have had everything back to normal in another way. This was a very specific thing that they chose to do, a circumstance, a unique circumstance that comes from this stuff, okay? But it's not from the source material. And it's a thorn in the side of purists because of the many butterfly effects that it causes that begin to change the universe further away from the original source material in a way that doesn't interest anyone. So now that's just an overall. So like every story is being affected by this, and like they've made a big deal about it in a bunch of the films. And people like me who are purists were just sort of like, groan. That's not something from the comics that we were, oh, please, let's take some time on the fact that there was a 5-year, like, where they didn't have to do that. Could have snapped his finger and he could have set things back in a way that 5-year thing wasn't a thing. Before he died. Before you die, Tony, can you get rid of this stupid blip thing? That would have been nice. In fact, if they really want to fix the universe, they need to like go back in time to that moment, wake Tony up and be like, dude, quick, get rid of this blip thing. That would be helpful. All right, so that's the first one. But now I'm going to go through all the mistakes and adjustments to the canon. I've talked at length about Captain Marvel, who they didn't do right. They should have adapted the death of Captain Marvel. They should have introduced us to the male, blonde-haired Captain Marvel, the Kree. They should have did the thing, and they should have had him die and had the movie end with her being upgraded to Captain Marvel and have that mean something and have that be cool. That could have been great, but they didn't do that. They cast Annette Bening as... It's so weird to even say that she's Captain Marvel. She's not Captain Marvel's not in the movie. The story of her having a mentor and things like that's not in the movie. They didn't do justice to Captain Marvel's origin. They changed things. They wrote the thing that they wanted to write, and that to me was really the beginning of the end for the Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything that it would become. And a lot of people kind of saw the writing on the wall then. I hoped for the best, but here we go. Spider-Man 2 Far From Home. Well, first of all, it's a bait and switch for Molten Man, Sandman, Hydro Man, and maybe Whirlwind or any number of wind-based villains from the comic books. This ends up being Mysterio, of course, and he's just using illusions. This story in this capacity, in this way, with these elemental beings or whatever else, this has never been told in comic book form. This is an original story to them. The relationship between Quentin Beck and Peter Parker doesn't exist either, even though I do like that. There's the capacity to be additive to the material, but just saying right here, none of this stuff is really being sourced from the comic books in any way, and they're doing the thing as they'd like to do it. They also sort of reference these villains in the press as the Elementals, who were some very obscure villains from the comic books. It's got nothing to do with them. And they're not even Spider-Man villains. So this is just sort of like a whole thing of a lot of the aspects of this story were just sort of weird. And again, the Ned, not traditionally Peter Parker's friend in the high school setting. Zendaya, not really Mary Jane in any way, shape, or form as a character. That character of Mary Jane still hasn't been brought to the big screen. The Mary Jane in Sam Raimi's trilogy behaves like Gwen Stacy, but has the life of Mary Jane. It's very weird. It's one of my biggest complaints about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies is like they did a weird amalgam with Mary Jane. And they really got Gwen Stacy right in the Andrew Garfield movies, which is why I liked them so much, because I liked Andrew Garfield and that actress together. I thought they were great. So kicking us off with Spider-Man. Spider-Man is basically in his own world in the Marvel movies. He's not exactly reflective of the comic book very closely. Black Widow, nothing from the comics. They didn't use anything from the comics. All those relationships and things. I mean, like very, very, very loose things. Like, that's not like I didn't watch that movie and once go, oh yeah, I remember that. Like it's not that kind of movie. Not that kind of movie. They did what they wanted to do. Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings. I mean, the 10 Rings, right there, right off the bat, the 10 Rings, the rings of the Mandarin. He has these rings that are like high technology of some kind, and or the magic or whatever, and they imbue him with all these different powers. Each ring gives him a different power. Super cool. Just simple concept, but I mean, like, stuff like that can be really fun when handled correctly. And he's literally like shooting rings at people. That's not something Shang-Chi does. So like next time he shows up, is he going to be like an Avengers level hero shooting rings at people? This is a character who is Bruce Lee. He was meant to be Bruce Lee. He was modeled after Bruce Lee. I wanted to see some great street level action with him, and he's shooting rings off of his wrists and like hanging out with dragons and stuff. Like, I mean, you know, I think there's occasionally been some coverage of some of that high fantasy territory here there with Shang-Chi, but generally speaking, it's way more rooted in like master of kung fu. That's the main point of it. So I mean, Shang-Chi and the Master of Ceremony, I mean, it's like that thing is not from the comics. Eternals, next film on the list. Like it does adapt some of the story on some levels, but there's some major changes, and the visuals were essentially thrown out the window completely. And I mean, that's the one thing that you should have kept. The Jack Kirby influence, the monsters and the things that he did. I mean, you know, like you can make some adjustments, but like just throw it out completely. And Eternals, you know, it largely did what it wanted to do. You know, it's a very, very loose adaptation here of this source material. Spider-Man 3 is literally about the 3 different film universes. So, you know, it's obviously not a story you could do. Even, you know, you couldn't do that story in the comics anyway. That's obviously why it hasn't been done there. But, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with comics. Doctor Strange and America Chavez in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. America Chavez and they have no history together. They're not associated with one another in any way, shape, or form. And depicted in that film is the Illuminati and their introduction here, and it's sacrilegious. This alternate multiverse of the Illuminati, that's not a known version of the team. It's not so many things I don't like about. That's not where they were introduced. That's not where they should have been introduced. That's not how they've been introduced in the past. So like again, it's not. Hey, here's that thing we promised you. No, like that's not the thing that you promised me. When I read those comics and I saw the Illuminati and I got excited about this thing, it didn't go down like this. This wouldn't have gotten me excited for more. I wouldn't have wanted to see that. If I read this as a comic, I wouldn't have thought, oh, I hope they turn this into a movie. But there are a whole bunch of comics that I'm waiting for them to turn into a movie because the visuals and the basic principles of the story are so great and so wonderful that they need to be brought to the big screen to a wider audience because most people won't read the comics. But I will, and they're great, and I hope that somebody will turn these things into films. But they're not adapting the right stories. Moving on from here. Oh, and by the way, just one more time, America Chavez should not have been in that fucking movie. She makes every frame of that movie that she's in look like shit because Doctor Strange has a certain aesthetic and the world that he lives in and the monsters that he fights and the things that he does, it has a certain aesthetic, and she just looks like a teenager in denim. She's just freaking hanging out in denim, making everything look denim. Ugh. It's appropriate when she's later, eventually on the Young Avengers, not in the first incarnation, but in a later incarnation of the Young Avengers. Makes sense. She looks good. She fits in with that team. She does not fit in here with Doctor Strange. He was not a good choice for him to pal around the multiverse with. He should have been using magic to go around the multiverse. He should have picked up Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider and Wesley Snipes' Blade along the way, and we should have had a little Midnight Suns thing going, and the 3 of them could have had a great old time, and it would have been amazing, and fans would have been like out of their freaking minds. I would have been out of my freaking mind. I thought for sure that's what they were going to do when they announced just the name of the movie, but that's not what they did. Anyway, I'm so disappointed in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. It's just like what it could have been. It could have been so many things. Anyway, Thor: Love and Thunder next up. This, not based on any story from the comics, except there are 2 characters shoehorned in poorly and changed for the worse. The Jane Foster Thor and Gore the God Butcher, who are just so much better in the comics, have better looks in the comics, so many things. I mean, just like more tragedy to Jane Foster's story in the comics. And I mean, just what a goofy, silly, stupid movie that they made here. And Taika Waititi, he's just demonstrated his lack of care for the source material and any of the things. But what he doesn't realize is the source material is actually wonderful, and these stories deserve to be brought to life properly. And just oh my God. I mean, seriously, it ends with Thor having a daughter This isn't anything that they've ever done in the comics. We don't have any stories of Thor with a daughter that we want to freaking hear about. Like you just like you don't understand like these stupid little changes that you make and they affect every story. We don't want to have to address a little girl in every further story of Thor that we ever write. So that means every story of Thor that I hope that I can get retold one day now has to be retold with him being a dad who has to deal with his daughter and like have to have his daughter featured in some capacity. Or they got to sideline this character, which makes me feel like he's a shitty dad because he's sidelined his daughter. Like when a character has a daughter, it's important that a daughter be like an important part of their story now. But Thor doesn't have a daughter. I haven't talked about this one and how mad it made me. I feel like I should do a whole episode about how upset I am about him having a fucking daughter because she exists. I feel like she needs to be acknowledged. I have 2 daughters, I have two sons, but like, your children are a big deal. You introduce children, it's not willy-nilly. Like that was a bad choice that you made for your stupid movie that is neither here nor there, that ruins Jane Foster's story as Thor, that ruins the story of Gore the God Butcher, which are both great and tragic stories. It's really just like, I tell you, there's just so many, like Thor has been just the most mishandled character of all the characters since since Endgame ended. I mean, his appearances in the What If series, the What If episodes with Thor, with this party Thor, it's such an insult to the character on so many levels. There's so many wonderful stories, but they're not goofy and stupid. They're serious and cool, and they have pathos and meaning, and I would love to see a return to that stuff. All right, continuing. And what have we had? Have we had anything that's like close to the comics yet? I mean, like we just have the introduction of a couple basic concepts, but they're just throwing everything out the window here. We got Wakanda Forever, not from the comics. There's a moment when Shuri takes the mantle, and Ironheart is a character, but Namor is all wrong. Namor is a foundational character for the Marvel Universe. To not get Namor correct is criminal. He is involved in so many storylines, in so many, with so many characters. You essentially fucking his appearance up here will fuck up so many other stories that you might want to tell with his character, because he's no longer the character that we love, that added value to those stories. This guy does not add value to those stories. It's really just like, that one is like one of the most criminal screw ups of phase 4 and 5 here, is just the introduction of Namor. I mean, just really screw you. What's her name? Alonzo. You freaking freaking up yours. I'm so Namor. Like, just ridiculous. Like, he's more of an alien than he is some sort of freaking ethnicity of people on planet Earth. He's a dude with pointy ears who comes from the ocean with wings on his feet. It's just like, you missed the fucking point here. This is just so stupid. Sorry, I didn't realize I was gonna get so mad about these. I didn't realize. I guess I should have realized, because there's certain characters that they have ruined that are some of my favorite characters that are just have so much to offer, and just to see the Marvel Universe get so many things right initially with Iron Man and with Captain America and with the Hulk eventually, Incredible Hulk movie that movie sucks, but the Avengers got the Hulk right, got the tone of the Hulk right. Of what to do with that character. He's a crowd-pleasing character for the audience. It's really it's funny because that series that they made, the TV series, it was always somber. It was always that Bill Bixby Hulk was like, oh man, life is depressing. But in the comics, when he's a part of other groups, that's really when he gets to be the most fun, because he makes life difficult for the other heroes who have their shit together. And he's just a big baby to some degree, and he makes things more difficult for his teammates. Like he would make it difficult for Namor on the Defenders, which is just the relationship between Namor and Hulk, because Namor just could not put up with this big green idiot all the time. Wonderful, wonderful relationships that get ruined by mischaracterization characterization of characters. So continuing on, we got I said Wakanda Forever. Like this is and Black Panther's death is not adapted from any source. Not this obviously in the comics. If you were gonna kill Black Panther, you'd see it happen, and then there'd be something. And like I really think that they should have made it so that we saw it happen. There was a lot of ways that they could have handled this that would have been much better, and would have kept Black Panther alive and would have sold some Black Panther toys, which they didn't sell any Black Panther toys. I'm a toy guy. I like the Wakanda Forever stuff did not move well. It's really hard to sell little boys on toys for a line that is dominantly women. I mean, like, I don't know if there are like any men in the toy line. So like you're basically going after all the tomboy girls who want to get some Shuri blasters and whatnot, and it was not a race. But if you could have included somebody in the Black Panther suit, cut together some dialogue that was unused and other things, and had Black Panther tragically get hurt or whatever it was at the beginning of the film, or just have him get lost or whatever else. Like they actually buried the body and all these things. I was like, how do you do this? Like, why do that when you could just have him missing or something like that and leave the door open to introduce another character? Now it's going to be his son is going to get introduced, and his son is a separate character. His son is not T'Challa, and because everybody will always know that it's not T'Challa, and so often the character's going to say, "Look, I'm not my father T'Challa. I couldn't be," and all the stories are going to come from a place of, "Well, I want to be like." We don't want to see that character. I want to see T'Challa worried about his father, honoring his father and honoring his tribe and whatever. I don't want to see this little kid honoring T'Challa. It's like they really they don't understand what the fans want, and we've been telling them that this isn't it. But a lot of the fans aren't great at articulating why this isn't it, and they're not listening. Okay, next up we've got The Marvels, which hasn't released yet, but on the list that I was at, Marvels was supposed to come out a long time ago. They kept delaying it, like they've delayed all these TV series, Agatha and Echo and the other one. The Marvels, not reflective of the book, of any books that exist. There's no books that exist that are a test run for this film that star Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and this book. Unless they've made some and put some out just in recent minutes to reflect the film universe or anything over the past bunch of years, there is nothing historically that this film is answering the promise of. Like, oh man, remember when you read that series? Oh God, it's so cool to finally see. Like, I'm not finally seeing shit. I'm not finally seeing shit in Thor: Love and Thunder other than a really shitty version of Gore, other than a really lackluster version of Jane Foster Thor, But here in freaking The Marvels, there's nothing that like, oh man, here it is for the first time, finally. Guardians 3, much as I love James Gunn on the things that he does, he's the biggest culprit of doing whatever he wants to do, generally with characters like Mantis, though I love her, and Adam Warlock. Some of these choices that he's made are wonderful, and they're things that you want to see adapted into the universe because they're so great. But some of them, many of them, steamroll over existing things that were also cool and I would have liked to maybe see. Additions to the team with the second and third film, respectively, are Mantis and Adam Warlock. And they are what Gunn needs them to be and nothing more. And I really, Adam Warlock in particular, like Mantis, she has like a shitload more powers. She's like a crazy cosmic being. She's like a next level powered character in the comics, or at least she was. And Adam Warlock isn't stupid. He's like, it's very interesting. Adam Warlock was like sort of like the birth of a robot person. He's very wise. He's like a baby with knowledge and wisdom, not stupid. Not like, maybe different and like the equivalent of like an autistic person, in that like he's seeing the world so differently that he's a little socially awkward in one way or another. But Adam Warlock was not that character from that thing. And addition. What do I want to say? Sorry, this is like I'm following my notes here. The High Evolutionary and Rocket Raccoon are also given this treatment by Gunn. He creates all this connection to them, which don't exist in the comics. They both have distinct origins from each other, even though they do occasionally cross over in the comics during major cosmic storylines. I was always a fan of both these characters prior to them being adjusted and wrapped into each other's origins. I didn't need them to change the origin for me to be a fan of the characters. I am fine with the new origins. I like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, okay, but just this is a continuing, subtle, and small erosion of all the foundations that make up the tapestry of the Marvel Universe. I'm going to wrap up the film list in a second. We're going to go into the TV things, and maybe I'm running a little late, but I'm gonna finish this because I think it's just like important to see how little adherence there has been to the source material, the shit that we are here to see. The foundational audience, we have been waiting for these stories to be turned into films, and they're not satisfying us. Quantumania, they ruined MODOK. I've talked about it at length. It's fucking hysterical. If you love MODOK and you want to hear me rant about how badly they fucked up MODOK and Quantumania, one of the early episodes of the show, the Quantumania episode is MODOK and Quantumania. And Ant-Man, not known for facing Kang in his personal adventures. It never happened. When Kang shows up, it's the entire Avengers who fight him. So this is just odd. All right, moving on to the TV stuff. You got WandaVision, obviously not based on any classic comic books. It's based on around TV sitcoms. Everything here is their way right away. You got Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is the one show that contains enough pieces of ideas from the comics as to be argued a solid tribute to the comics, except it runs through all these great ideas like a dozen $1 million hookers in just a handful of episodes, and quite wastefully. U.S. Agent would have been a great storyline with Steve Rogers around. Falcon becoming Cap would have been a great storyline in the future, after we had time to really get to know him as Falcon and got to really see Steve Rogers in all of his most classic storylines. And then, and in the comics, Steve comes back and he's the Falcon for a minute, and it would have been great. It was earned. That was cool because they during this Marvel Now period, they upgraded all sorts of characters across the board, introduced all sorts of new characters, and had them swap mantles, and all the white guys got shuffled out of the room, kind of thing, and that was all well and good in the case of Falcon, because the audience was like, well, dude's been around for a really long time, and I like him as a character, and Falcon's a solid choice. I think we were more open to this than we were the other ones. At the same time, we'd rather see Steve Rogers and him, it's a little bit like, yo, dude, your best friend took your girl. Your best friend took your spot. We love them as best friends. So we like the dynamic that was already created. So changing up this dynamic isn't the most satisfying thing. So it didn't go over amazing in the comics. It went over, though, better, I think, than all this other shit. But I do not believe that it was ever Falcon and the Winter Soldier connected together, and not as far as I remember. I don't remember reading any comics like that where they were like buddies. They've been trying to make them like a buddy group. Falcon and the Winter. There was no Falcon and the Winter Soldier comic to begin with. So this isn't anything from the comics either. Anyway, the Flag Smashers also would have been a great storyline with Captain America, better bad guy costumes, reflective of the comic book characters, and the removal of all the subtle modern day politics. And, maybe that could have been good. It would have been great, the addition of Isaiah Bradley, but that's a much bigger storyline. That would have been amazing to fucking focus on that and adapt that more properly. You could have called it Falcon and the Winter Soldier and had that be tie them into that storyline in some way. I don't know. But that would have been better and would have been closer to adapting some of the storylines that exist within the comic books and are so wonderful. Loki. The character is an evil Norse god. He's not a time traveler. This is just nothing from the comic books in any way, shape, or form. Yes, there's a girl Loki in the comics. I'm pretty positive he gets turned into a girl. He just, he gets transformed into a girl. It's like a curse that gets put on him, or something that he does to mess with people. Or I don't remember exactly, but it was definitely nothing like you see in this thing. And, this like multiverses of Loki, this is all kind of freaking weird, really opening up a whole bunch of Pandora's boxes of like, what? Okay, so now we're doing multiverse with Loki in the comics, and because, well, now we know, now we own all of these different types of Loki that people are interested in. Like, oh God, like, we like this character for other reasons. You're getting away from why we actually like Loki. What If is what it is, but all of the what ifs are from the film continuity. So clearly, we're not continuing anything from the comics. This is just from the films. We got a few more left here. We got Miss Marvel. Skip. I don't know. This may be an exception, but they changed her powers from the comics for one, which I like because I didn't really like her powers in the comics. But I did read a little bit of it back in the day, but it was not particularly memorable for me. So I don't know how accurate it was to the thing. I mean, just they introduced Kamala, and she's a fan of Captain Marvel, and she's got a family, and she's like a sweet kid. Like, it seems like they basically did this comic justice, but this comic crossed all the boxes that they have to cross for all the other things that are being changed forcefully. This one was the thing they wanted, so they didn't have to change much. Well, I guess that really is why nothing's changed here. But yeah, Miss Marvel's probably, that's really sad to say, Miss Marvel is the most accurate adaptation from the comic books to date. And Miss Marvel is one of the modern day comic book characters that they made when they started getting really self-conscious about criticisms that were being made about the industry and started trying to invent all of these new characters that were representative, which is not a bad thing. It's just really a bad thing of how they've gone about doing it, and they've not succeeded, and they haven't kept adjusting and rolling until they made some success. The only success they've really had is Miles Morales. Miles Morales is a wonderful character. He was introduced really great by Brian Michael Bendis. He was introduced in his own universe as Spider-Man. He got to fight all of Spider-Man's villains, but he got to be his own character and with his own backstory. And, that character has really worked and really been embraced by the audience. But it's not been such an easy thing for so many of the other characters who were created. I don't want to say specifically, but so much of the drive was mandate from on top to be additive to the Marvel Universe in a very specific way, to add in, more color, more female led books, and more female characters in the books and on the teams in general, and more diversity in different sexual interests. Anyway, I do think a character like Ms. Marvel can work, and does work already on some levels. I just think that they really need to put more love into the creators that are handed the reins, and Pixar level material needs to be done. It can't just be more juvenile and sweet and expect the fandom to accept it as part of the lore and something that really matters to us. We need to see some people who we respect take the time to create stories for them that give them respect, give them our respect. And I don't think Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel or a lot of these newer characters that they've been pushing over the past decade and a half now or whatever have really been given the respect they've deserved by being given credible creators. And I don't know if it's because the credible creators don't want to touch these characters. It might be, and that might be part of it, but whatever. Sorry for taking us a little bit over on this week's episode, but I got this list. So I'm going to finish it. Hawkeye. Hawkeye adapts the comic okay in some ways, but Clint isn't the Hawkeye from the comics. He just really isn't. He's like loosely, maybe he's closer to the Ultimate version, or like a mix of the Ultimate version. In the comics, he's this circus performer. He kind of starts as a villain. He becomes a good guy very quickly. And, in the Ultimate version, he's a military guy who's kind of more like a character like Bullseye from the comics. Never misses, a crazy marksman. And this version is something similar. He's got a family, so that makes him different. So all these stories, as written in the comics, had to be adjusted. There's a lot of things that get adapted here and are done a certain amount of justice, but it's not really adapting the comics directly. But there is there is some thematic stuff that come out here. I mean, it's really actually why I like Hawkeye as much as I do. I mean, this is probably the one that's like close, like they really tried to like bring it as close into the comics as possible. I think mainly because they knew that people cared about Clint the least because he had the least ties to the comics. He was the loosest, weirdest kind of adaptation of any of the characters from the original Avengers was Hawkeye. Everybody else was pretty on the money in their execution. Hawkeye was significantly different, close to the Ultimate version, I guess, or close enough. So anyway, it's like they did their best that they could here, but the foundations of Hawkeye from the film universe is just really different. She-Hulk is literally a different character. If I talk about it in any length, I'll get super heated and mad. Jennifer Walters of the comic books is optimistic and grateful and cool, saved by her uncle, her cousin, and given a new lease on life and given a new life as a glamorous, beautiful, super heroic person who also happened to always have been a really smart, sweet, kind lawyer. You know, like that character is one of my favorite characters. They could have had an evergreen sitcom starring She-Hulk and a rotating cast of hilarity could have ensued. If they would have let me show run that thing, this She-Hulk show would go on forever. It would be one of the most successful things Marvel ever did. She-Hulk should be the face of the brand. Really, like She-Hulk should be the face of the brand. Moving on, Moon Knight. They just really fucked up the tone. It's so goofy. They fucked up the tone huge. Street level brutality is Moon Knight's thing. You know, instead we got a tour of Egypt. You know, Moon Knight. You know, he's not that book where like giant gods are having fist fights in Egypt. It's not that kind of book. I don't really know what they thought they were doing, but this is like this weird amalgam of the Moon Knight from the comics. It's just bizarre. It was not satisfying to us Moon Knight fans in any way, shape, or form. The second season of I Am Groot. The first season was cute, but like, you know, this isn't based on any of the comics. It's just a cute little thing they did. Werewolf by Night. If you saw that, it was a black and white thing that they did on the Disney Plus. Some characters introduced from the comics here, but not close to how they were introduced in the comics. And it was just sort of like a Marvel horror character buffet, where they're like, oh yeah, a little bit of this and a little bit of this. We got some man thing and whatnot. It's just nothing from the comics. Did not scratch any itch for me when it came to that stuff. Also, you got the holiday special, co-starring Kevin Bacon. Clearly not really about any of the comics. And then recently, you got Secret Invasion, which rewrites the whole story. We knew it was going to. In the comics, it was all about super people getting taken and replaced by Skrulls, by Super Skrulls. And the Super Skrulls are these characters that have multiple powers from different superheroes. Originally, the only Super Skrull that existed was Super Skrull that fought the Fantastic Four. And how about you introduce the concept of the Super Skrull first before you ruin it by introducing the idea of armies of Super Skrulls and all this shit. It's just like you just really jumped the shark here and went too big too soon, as they so often do with Marvel and DC when introducing these concepts. They really just jump the shark in terms of building momentum and excitement and energy for all of these things that they're dangling in our faces. Anyway, it was wrong on every level, and it really fucks up one of the shows that's coming up, which is called Armor Wars. It's they introduced that Roddy is a Skrull. So the lead in Armor Wars is War Machine, and he's a Skrull. Who wants to watch a Skrull fighting it's like, really, this is like the stupidest thing. Like, nobody's going to watch Armor Wars now. Nobody's going to want to. I don't know. That one's a weird one for me. Anyway, the discerning fans were right about every single one of these Phase 5 offerings in particular when they were announced. Secret Invasion, Quantumania, Marvels, Loki Season 2, Blade, Daredevil, Thunderbolts, and New World Order, the Captain America movie. Everything is playing out exactly as we called. But they are taking a turn here on Daredevil. It's too late with Quantumania and the buildup that they've had for Kang with him now. More Kang in Loki Season 2. More him being defeated, I'm sure, or whatever it is. And it's just like being seen as a goofy character as opposed to a serious character. All these things, we were talking about them. Blade film was going to be about his daughter. Well, that derailed, and the actor was bailing out, and now it's being rewritten, and all these other things that was announced long ago. Now you got Daredevil, writers fired, being rewritten. But still on the docket is the Captain America New World Order, which we know, generally speaking, people were not happy about the previous thing, and missing Steve Rogers in all capacity, the character, are people going to show up? You know, we tend to think that the goose is cooked here a bit, and it's diminishing returns, and they're not going to see the sizes of the audiences that they were seeing yesterday. Thunderbolts, it's not remotely reflective of the Thunderbolts. Like, not remotely. And remember, like, even though we're doing the Captain America New World Order, which is like a story from the comics kind of thing, we're coming off of this Captain America Winter Soldier thing, or Falcon Winter Soldier thing, where, you know, that story is going to continue. Like, you have to have seen that in order to understand some of the things, and Winter Soldier's being shoehorned in as like buddy to the Falcon or the new Captain America as his sidekick, but that's not something that they've ever executed in the comics. Again, not the comics. Thunderbolts, not the comics. This is just some team that they're putting together themselves. In the comics, the Masters of Evil disguise themselves as a superhero team to win the public's trust, to take over the world. That's the basic story of the original Thunderbolts. This is just a name being put on a bunch of characters that they've introduced in films, some more successfully than others. I mean, we're not interested in a lot of these characters, or at least not a lot of these characters we're not interested in the way that they've been introduced. So, I mean, this is crazy. But the Daredevil writers are fired. So I think whoever they bring in to replace them will say everything about whether or not this is a sign of a brighter future. I think that, like DC, there's a lot of shit that's already in the pipeline and already in the works that they're going to have to work around to not damage their brand any further and actually right the ship here. I mean, really, like, they're sitting on 3 shows that the fans are not going to watch, and that means most people aren't going to watch them. And when the fans do watch them, the fans are not going to like them because they're not based on anything. And we've seen the quality of the work that they've been putting out. We can predict where it's going to go from here. It's just like this meandering machine that makes content. And they've lost sight of what us, the fans of this material, are actually looking for. Anyway, I'm your friend, Jesse Blaze Snyder, and you can write to me at jesseblaze@jessesnyder.com or follow me on the Twitter. I'm at Coolest Geek JBS. And yeah, I love you. Join me next Saturday and every Saturday. I'm trying to maybe do a Spider-Man comics recommendation episode next Saturday, if I can get my buddy Aaron Sparrow to help me out with a list, because he's read a lot more Spider-Man than I've read. So I want to get like all of his recommendations, because I've just kind of jumped into Spider-Man at various times because I'm a fan. Anyway, I'll see you next Wednesday for another awesome episode of the Coolest Geek Alive.
It's my favorite part. Isn't that heavy? I'll play that. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Coolest alive. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Stay with your tribe. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Revenge of the Geeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Week after weeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Laughing with you. It's gonna be fucking awesome. And crying sometimes too. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Spelling it out. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Making you shout.
You've been listening to Coolest Geek Alive with me, your host, Jesse Blaze Snyder. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more excellent geek culture content. Thanks for listening.
You like that? It's a kazoo solo. be fucking awesome. Talking some shit. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Living the shit. My voice gonna be fucking awesome. Food in our mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Get in the mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Tell all your friends. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Call right or text. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Raising the bar. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Straight to the stars. It's gonna be fucking awesome. It's starting soon. Straight to the fucking awesome. Passing the moon. It's gonna be fucking awesome. On with the show. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Ready, set, go.
It's got to be fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. It's gotta be fucking awesome. Just wait. You'll see. You'll all see.
The podcast playground. Hooray!